Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Directors agenda meeting for January 31st, 2017. I'd like to welcome everybody that's in attendance with us here in City Hall. This is our opportunity to review an agenda for our meeting, our upcoming meeting on February 7th. And so we've got that agenda, but we have a few presentations first to conduct. And we're certainly proud to have Pulaski Academy with us for another championship season. And let me call on City Director Lance Hines to do the honors.
Good afternoon. Well, I see we've got Coach Kelly and all the team here. Again, I think this is the third year in a row we've had them in the boardroom. On December 3rd, 2016, at Little Rock's War Memorial Stadium, the Pulaski Academy Bruins won the 5A football state championship. This is their third consecutive 5A football state championship and sixth overall. This was the 53rd football championship won by a Little Rock school. The team defeated Magnolia, Forest City, and Batesville on the way to facing off against Wynn in the championship game. In the 4 games of the state playoffs, the Bruins scored 197 points, and the opponents scored only 62 points. Pulaski Academy's season record was 13 wins and 1 loss. In the past 3 championship seasons, they have amassed 40 wins and only 2 losses. Wow. 6 members of the team were named All-State: Cameron Fonseca, Lane Hatcher, Hayden Henry, Seth Martin, Brooks Walton, and Jaron Watkins. Mr. Hatcher, Mr. Martin, and Mr. Watkins were named All-State in 2015 as well. The gentlemen are coached by Kevin Kelly, who also serves as the athletic director. Also on the coaching staff are Anthony Lucas, Madison Taylor, Todd Wood, Jason Wyatt, and Blake Almsler. Matt Walsh is president and head of school, and Greg Griffith is head of the upper school. Coach Kelly, would you come up? I've got a plaque I'd like to give you, and then we'll have your football players stand up and come to the mic, introduce themselves, and if they know where they're going to school, tell us where they're going to school.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we've got a plaque for you here, and it'll go on your wall. You guys enlarged the trophy case yet? in your new training facility?
We're glad to have that problem.
Mayor Mark Stodola, the City Board of Directors, and City Manager Bruce T. Moore congratulate the Pulaski Academy Bruins, 2016 5A football state champions. In the quest for the championship, the players and coaches exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, responsibility, and teamwork. January 31st, 2017. Congratulations. Just tell me your name and if you know where you're going to school.
I'm just a junior.
Okay, well, just tell
My
me.
name's Hayden Cobb, and I'm just a junior, so I got another year to play football.
My name is Ja'Cory McMillan, and I am going to Henderson State to play football.
Go ready.
I'm Zach DeVede, and I'm going to the University of Arkansas, but not playing any sports.
I'm Seth Martin. I'm going to Georgetown University to play football.
I'm Ray Jackson, and I'm going to Brown University to play football.
I'm Mark Odom, and I'm undecided between Arkansas and Louisiana Tech.
I'm Peyton Titus, and I'm going to Fayetteville just to not go play football.
Hello, I'm Trevor James. I'm going to Euler to further my education.
Very good.
I'm Wesley Wise, and I'm a junior.
I'm Luke Bratcher, and I'm a junior.
Tyler Trowbridge, and I'm a junior.
Robert Johnson, still undecided, but we'll get there.
David Steele, and I'm going to University of Arkansas at Fayetteville.
David, you got your rings on?
That I do.
Those are state championship rings.
These are 2014 and 2015.
We'll have your boys bring back in. But
When do you get the 16?
I'd like to say thank you guys for having us. I think it's outstanding anytime you get a chance to celebrate students and give them opportunity to kind of realize the benefits of what the hard work, because sports are hard. Thank you guys for making time for us and mentioning some of the things that we hold, valuable. One of the things that we teach besides life lessons, or we talk about the things that you've mentioned on the plaque, the sportsmanship and representing, and we talk about representing our families and the school, but we go to trips out of state to play football games, and we really, really try to represent our state extremely well. And we've been to California and Florida and all over in Washington D.C. and there's a different thought when it comes to the state of Arkansas about what people on the outside think, and we're trying to change that mindset in a positive way. And I think these young men and our coaching staff have done a great job, and we're really lucky to do that, and we're really lucky to have. I've got our president here, Matt Walsh, of our school, and he's extremely supportive and excellence in all endeavors, academics, athletics, and the fine arts. So we're extremely proud, and thank you guys for having us, and we're going to continue to try to do things to highlight Little Rock and the state of Arkansas.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Coach, and congratulations to the team. You guys have really been outstanding and consistently are taking good lessons from your coaches. Certainly the winning record is something to be envied. You want to take a photograph?
We're going to bring them in for a
Sure.
photograph. You guys just kind of line up around
May have to do a second. Take the guy with the casket on his knee, I see.
Take a knee.
Back up, Bill. All right. 1, 2, 3.
Big boys. Yeah. Thank you. We also have another champion in our midst as well from Baptist Preparatory Academy, and Lance is going to do the honors on that as well. Lance.
Thank you, Mayor. Fellow board members, on October 18th, 2016 at Russellville High School, Seth Hernandez of Baptist Prep won the boys 4A tennis singles championship. This is the second year Mr. Hernandez has made it to the finals and faced off against Kyle Hudson of Pottsville. While last year's results were not as favorable, this year Mr. Hernandez dominated the match and won in 2 sets. On the way to the finals, he defeated players from Boonville, Heber Springs, and Riverview. While his opponent in the finals had a bye in the first round, Mr. Hernandez did not. In addition to winning the state title, Mr. Hernandez received the 2016 Tennis All-State designation. He also received this honor in 2015. Mr. Hernandez is coached by Mark Thompson. Dr. Laura Bednar is the headmaster, and Randy Goldsmith is the upper school principal, and Billy Goss is the athletic director. Mr. Seth Hernandez, if you'll come up, I got a plaque to present to you. This says, Mayor Mark Stodola and the City Board of Directors and City Manager Bruce T. Moore congratulate Seth Hernandez, 2016 4A Boys Tennis Singles State Championship. In the quest for the championship, the player and his coaches exemplified outstanding sportsmanship, participation, leadership, responsibility, and teamwork. Dated January 31st, 2017. Congratulations. You can tell the board a few words, and if you know where you're going to school, you can tell them.
My name is Seth Hernandez. I'm 16, and I will continue to go to Baptist Prep for my junior year next year.
And I think, are your parents with you? Y'all, please stand up. We'll recognize you as well.
You bet. Congratulations, Seth. We're proud of you.
There you go. Thank you. Oh, we want to get a picture here. Oh, and I think his coach is here also. I'm sorry, I would
Coach?
think.
More like a manager. They won't even let me drive him to the
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Manager. Okay, we have another presentation of the Think Big Little Rock presentation from the chamber. And I think we've got some representatives from the committee. Yes, Director Campiris.
There are many things in the world that you can be proud of, but this presentation and the group of young people you're going to hear about is a wonderful opportunity for our city. Every city needs to do something where they ask the young people what they want in their city, how they want their city to be. And through a long process, wouldn't you say, Buckley and Shep, we have talked about how to do this, and 50 for the Future has put up the money to do a goal-setting process for young people. And their involvement has been to select the 4 co-chairmen, 3 of who are here today. And with the help of Buckley O'Mell, they have basically done the rest with ULR as far as a goal-setting process. And they have been working for about 6 months now. And they will go through the process that they've done and where they stand now, and they are really ready now to start surfacing what they're doing and getting more input. And I think their goal is by December to have a plan on how they think this community should move forward. And there is money set aside for seed money to help them do the things they think that should be done. And I'll leave it at that and let them introduce themselves, and then they can make the presentation as they want.
Good afternoon, Board. I'm Antoine Phillips, one of the 4 co-chairs. I'm an attorney at Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings. Amanda's going to do most of the talking. I'm going to reside myself over to the clicker to make sure the presentation flows smoothly. But thank you for having us this evening.
I'm Kiara Wilkins. I'm with Delta Dental of Arkansas, and while Antoine clicks, I'm going to take pictures because I'm a millennial, so.
Good afternoon. I'm Amanda Richardson. In real life, I work for the Delta Regional Authority as the director of their Leadership Institute, and I have the privilege of getting to do this in some of my free time. So it's a real pleasure for us to be here and kind of share with you a little bit about where we've come since we got started and where we plan to go. So without further ado, Antoine. So yes, sir. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. That was on my list. And our 4th co-chair is Chris East. Chris is an architect with Cromwell, and he actually set the bar really high with these presentations and has been doing that around the city. And so I have big shoes to fill. So, I've already forgotten the most important part, which was to introduce him. So he couldn't be here, but he sends his thanks for your support. And as Director Campiris mentioned, we had a goal and an assignment and a challenge, if you will, to put together a year-long strategic assessment and implementation process aimed at improving Little Rock's overall quality of place and making it a community in which young professionals will want to live and work. The project is an inclusive and participatory initiative focused on an age group that traditionally had little input in building Little Rock's future. I think that it's really appropriate that we're here giving a presentation on the same day that we have had champions from Pulaski Academy and Baptist Prep here, and hearing the seniors saying they're going off to Brown and Georgetown to play football and study. And part of our goal and challenge is to make sure that they want to come back as young people. So the other thing, as Kara mentioned, as millennials we boiled that assignment down into a mission statement that makes it a little easier to communicate with you what our goals are, which we'll get to in a little bit. We have a time frame. As Director Campuris mentioned, we're about 6 months in. We first got started in late summer, and we met for the first time in September as a steering committee. We have over 100 young professionals from ages 25 to 40 who are part of this committee to think big. So we've been having monthly meetings of task forces that are doing research and fact-finding right now. At the end of our research and fact-finding, we'll be doing some public meetings, some town halls, and some focus groups around where we are so far. And then we'll continue those monthly meetings to strategize about recommendations going forward, what we as a group of young people, from millennials to cuspers, and as I raise my hand, to really think about what we want for our city to look like as we move into the future and raise our families here. At the end, we will have a white paper, and I like to think about how you're familiar with the term think tanks, and think tanks put white papers out. Well, we're kind of an action tank, so we're not planning to stop in December. Our goal is to continue to see that our recommendations can be implemented over time. We've selected task force chairs and coordinated with them. We have 6 task forces, and they work with subcommittees that are really the heart and soul of what is going into the research and the recommendations for our project. In addition to our monthly meetings, we meet with the task forces separately once a month, and those task forces meet in between. So this is really a commitment for our young professionals to be a part of this process, and they all have taken it very seriously in coming together on a regular basis to look at ways that we can improve the community. That's okay. So in addition to Chris's skills as a co-chair, I mentioned that he's an architect, and so he's a visual thinker in a lot of ways, and we really started to formulate what we were going to look like using this illustration. So you've got Kara, Antoine, Chris, and myself serving as co-chairs and working through the levels. We also participate in the subcommittee level in the conversations and research. But these are our 6 task forces, and these were identified through a day-long brainstorming session at that first meeting, things that we felt were the most important for us as young professionals to focus on over the next year and a half. And that's, as you can see, diversity, transportation and environment, public safety, economic development, arts and culture, and public education. Just wanted to give special thanks to those that have stepped up to chair those task forces. Like I said, they meet in addition to our monthly meetings as a whole steering committee of over 120 people. These folks meet with us throughout the month, and it is no small feat. So as task force chairs, like I've mentioned, they lead the agenda, they coordinate, and they really identify and prioritize. They're pushing the conversation in coordination with the Institute for Economic Advancement at UALR, who serve as facilitators and provide space and resources and research. Anytime we need data or information about impacts going backwards or looking at what other cities that are maybe a little bit ahead of Central Arkansas, a little bit behind, any of the data that we need, the Institute for Economic Advancement assists us with that. And here's, as I mentioned, Chris is a visual learner, as am I, and so just a little bit of a snapshot of one of our Sunday afternoon meetings, a task force session, and working through, I believe that's from one of our early SWOT analyses of Transportation and Environment's task force. So our project phases, we've plugged this into 4 phases. Right now we're in research and fact find, which we'll be doing through the end of February. We then are going to move into developing strategies and kind of focusing on recommendations through July. Starting in August, we'll open it up for a period of public comment as we finalize the report and those recommendations from our group. And then in November and December, we're going to be focusing on how we market that report, what our plan for implementation is, and how we want to see these things through into the future. We did add a 7th committee that we didn't want to leave out, and that is a messaging committee. One of the things that, as we looked back on initiatives in cities across the country is there are a lot of great things happening, but there's not always a great way to share that story. And so at the point where you get to public comment, there are a lot of stakeholders who don't recognize what you've been working on to date. So we've added a messaging committee. We have several professionals who are in the marketing field to help us develop our story, our message, as we work on a campaign strategy for implementation. And just a shout out, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at #ThinkBigLR. This is another visual of the brainstorm of our messaging committee, from strategies and implementation to who's kind of take point on what. And that was another day-long strategy session. There's our chairs again. Our messaging chair, Abby Seiler, who works for Stone Ward, has really taken the lead in helping us get that message sort of codified and out as we move into the recommendation phase. As I mentioned, we took that assignment that was in the first slide and really boiled it down into a mission statement that could be memorized as we move forward in the process. All of our task force chairs, our messaging committee, and our co-chairs took part in a session where we boiled that down to improve overall community in Little Rock Metro for young professionals. We think you can dissect words and phrases within that mission statement to mean lots of things as they apply to what your priorities as a professional might be to help recruit and retain, and especially for those as a Little Rock native who grew up here, went off to college, and came back to help bring more of what was that brain drain back to the Little Rock Metro. Just a little shout out, this is one of the ways that we communicate. Basecamp has been a very effective tool for us to upload files and send messages, and in the millennials day and age to communicate outside of emails, phone calls, and meetings. So there's things being posted there every day, and it's pretty amazing to watch. That's a little more about what Basecamp does, just a snapshot of what that Basecamp tool looks like for us. All of us are at this table for Think Big Little Rock as volunteers. In addition to what we do professionally, we have a personal stake as residents and young professionals in Little Rock to be a part of this process. And so we have to find time on breaks and after hours and on Saturdays and Sundays to get together to do this. And as somebody who works in a field of organizing leaders, this is exactly what you hope an effort like this will look like, with people truly engaging in the process. As I mentioned, we'll get to the point right around the first half on that time frame where we want to have town hall meetings. We also think that focus groups is a really effective way to gauge where we are and where we're going, and if we're hitting the mark or missing the mark. As you all are keenly aware, town halls can be hit or miss. Not everybody will show up for a town hall, but we think that the focus group opportunity will really give us that substance and feedback that we're looking for as we continue to proceed. And thank you. And as I mentioned, we do meet on Saturdays, Sundays, after hours. As a steering committee, we have over 120 people who meet once a month, and that is the second Sunday of the month. So our next workshop is at 2 p.m. on Sunday, and we would love to have you join us. And if you have any questions, all three of us are available for questions.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the update and the direction that y'all are going, and certainly are looking forward to seeing some of the results of your research and your analysis and ultimately implementation. So, good status report. Appreciate it. Director Kavirs?
Well, I want to tell the four of them and all the young people that are participating how proud I am of what they've done. Basically, we said, here's a facilitator at ULR, here's rooms, y'all figure out how to do it. And basically, there has been nothing, I think this is a valid statement, there's been no pressure on them to do it one way or another. There's been no pressure on them to come up with something. There's been no pressure on them to do anything except say, how do we make this city better for young people to come back? And so it's a year and a half, year and 3 months worth of getting to know each other, having a very goal-driven or group of young people who want to make this city better. And it has been amazing to see how they have sensitized what they have into what they think we need to have as a community and have gotten the groups together to do it. And I'm really looking forward to the fall to hear what they have to say on what we should be doing for our city.
The future's in your hands, so we will look forward to hearing back from you, and certainly any of the resources of the city that you need from a research standpoint or otherwise, are at your disposal.
Thank you.
That concludes our presentations for today. Just a reminder, on the 7th of February, we're going to have a welcome from the Vice Mayor of Hanam City, who's bringing a delegation from our sister city of Hanam City, South Korea. So they'll be here for our meeting on the 7th. If you would, let me direct your attention now to the agenda, the consent agenda, items 1 through 11, and let me ask if there's anyone who has a question or two on any of these. Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please. There
First
you
out
are.
of the box, yay. Mr. Moore, on Resolution 2, it's talking about the contract for funding for Chico and Mableville, I think it's North Chico and Mableville Pike. Do we have a timeline for start and finish? I've noticed some of our streets that we're doing improvements on, it seems to take an awful long time to get those done. And while we're working on them, we have people that are displaced. They've got to drive over roads that are not perfect and this kind of thing. So I'm just curious, this is going to be, I think, a busy street. Both of them are, and so I'd like to know what our start and finish timelines are.
Sure.
Well, we'll get that for you, Director Wyrick. As part of the contract, we negotiate a certain number of days, and it's based on the scope of the project, and we just don't have that. And this is the first step, and then we'll sit down with the contractor. But we'll get that for you. This is a big job, $1.1 million. So it's going to take a little time, but we try to be sensitive to the overall time it takes.
Are we going to do it in phases? Maybe to help with the traffic flow and the.
Let me ask Mr. Honeywell to come forward.
Mayor, Board, Director Wyrick, the road won't be closed to traffic. It'll be maintained for traffic to move through that area, but it will be a construction zone, so it will impact the ability for traffic to move through there, but it's not going to be closed where people won't be able to use that road.
I understand that, but it's it's hard on the cars and the individuals getting through there, and it's a skinny. Both of the roads are skinny little roads already. So my concern is the length of time that it's going to be under construction, and I'd just like to have that information.
Sure. We'll get you that schedule of what we think the contract time or the construction time frame will be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution number 3, Mr. Moore. I need some clarity on the eminent domain, as well as I thought from Shackelford to Gamble was in Ward 6. And you have Ward 5. Will you clarify those two things?
Honeywell.
This project, I believe, crosses both Wards 5 and 6.
Will you please add that to the
Definitely, we will. And as far as the eminent domain, are you? We're in the process of trying to acquire right-of-way through negotiation with all the property owners.
That's what I wanted to hear.
We have 55 parcels that we are acquiring as part of this project. We already have 25 of those. We currently are expecting to get 10 more of those with the offers that we have out. But there's also properties out there that don't have clear title or have title issues where the only way to actually acquire that is through an eminent domain process. And then there may be property owners out there that we can't come to an agreement through the negotiation process, and we have to go through the eminent domain process to get the property.
Can you tell me how many of those that you can't reach? Would you be able to provide that information?
Do you mean ones that we
I mean, I want
don't
to know
come-
which ones I'm gonna hear from.
Certainly.
That are upset. I don't want to be blindsided.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay, because when you start talking eminent domain, it gets real serious real fast.
And at this time, we don't have any plans to go that direction, but we do like to have it.
Just in
Your
case.
approval to go that direction if we need to in the future to make sure this project continues to move forward.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And you're gonna add the Ward 6?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Director Hines, you're next, please.
John, come back up. I got questions on the same resolution. So, can you give me some timelines? It seems like this, I know we've had some design issue, and then, of course, the right-of-way acquisition is probably taking a little bit longer. What's the plans as far as final design and going to bid and start turning dirt on this section, or the whole section, actually?
We need to get this right-of-way acquired first. At that point, we can turn utilities loose to start moving utilities. There's going to be a tremendous amount of utility relocation associated with this project. At this point, I can't give you a firm timeframe of when they'll be done with their work. We have to get the right-of-way first before we can have them start moving. But I will try to get an approximate schedule for you as far as length of time by next week, by our next meeting, or the end of this week.
And then the other we had talked about doing this in two phases on the section from Shackelford to Bowman and then Bowman down to Gamble, or is it just going to turn as one full-on project?
We'll still keep it separated,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll just depend on the final cost of right-of-way and any utility relocation costs. What money is remaining at that point is how far we're going to be able to go with each of those sections of road.
And what's the projection once we do start turning dirt as far as completion? What's the contractual? Do we know that yet? Is it
We
gonna
haven't gotten to that point yet, but I would assume this, because of the scale and scope of this project, it's especially the section between Shackelford and Bowman. We're going from a very narrow 2-lane road to a 5-lane section that's in terrain that's not flat, so there's a lot of earthwork that's involved. I would probably assume that's going to be at least a year contract for them to do that.
I was thinking 12 to 18 months. All right. All right, that's the only questions I have about that. Thanks.
Can I get that report as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I know Spring Valley Manor is going to.
Sure.
Director Hancock, you're recognized, please.
Mr. Moore, on item 5, could you tell me where this site is located and if it's going to serve a certain age or certain area?
Director Ecker, I'll have to, Ms. Doucette is ill today, so I'll see if we can, it's a citywide, so it should serve citywide, but I'll find out where it is.
Okay,
exactly.
was there any reason that this one was,
Yeah, it was just inadvertently left off the list.
okay, thank you.
And Bruce, as a corollary to that, I think Dana mentioned that there were some of the special areas that were not responded to. Could you give us a list of those?
Yeah, we did, and I'll provide it again because we're going to rebid those.
Right, but.
Right, okay.
Mr. Moore,
I've had a couple of people contact me about it. That's why I wanted to make sure that I knew the scope of the areas that we're targeting.
since this is a community program youth thing, I do want to remind everyone that tomorrow is a day that you can get online, your young people, and apply for the summer youth jobs with the city of Little Rock.
Thank you for that information. I've had some inquiries.
But tomorrow is the day.
Okay, that's starting to apply.
Well, they're going to take the first 1,000, and they think they might get that the first day.
That's what.
Yeah, I didn't think we need any reminders.
Yeah, people are asking about it.
Well, you know, yeah, it's a pretty big deal, and We, you know, and I say this for those people that may be watching on this meeting, is that, you know, we get at least 1,800 or so young people who want a summer job, and we're lucky to be able to fill 600 or 700 of them. So certainly, the community reaching out and providing summer jobs is something very important. I know that probably every director up here, Dean Compuris, myself, Director Webb, all had the opportunity to have somebody in the business community give us a summer job when we were teenagers. So I would hope that we can get, and probably everybody else that's up here too. I would hope that we can get some businesses to step up and give opportunity to as many young people as possible to get a job. So
All business needs to do, Mayor, is just call a community program, and they'll have an employee for the summer. They do not have to pay, and there's someone else helping train them.
okay, Director Wyrick, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to go back to item 2. I didn't ask about right-of-way or eminent domain. Is there going to be right-of-way purchases or eminent domain on this street?
We've already completed that.
You've already completed it. Okay, and I didn't hear anything, so that's a good sign.
That's a good thing.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions on the consent agenda, we can move on to the item, grouped items and separate items, public hearings. And let me ask if there's any questions about any of these. Director Wright?
Ordinance number 14, it says that staff is recommending denial, Mr. Moore. I thought this was kind of something temporary.
No, as we talked about it before, Director Wright, they brought this before in the past, and it's failed at the Planning Commission. It failed again. Now they're appealing it, but this is to be a permanent storage facility.
Okay.
Oh, well, let me.
This says temporary here.
Hey, Tony. Let me ask Tony to
Okay,
update that.
because this says
It
temporary
was a
storage
little different
module.
than-
Director Wright, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. Item 14 is property at Shackelford Crossings. It's the Cracker Barrel lot. And it is, the request is to revise the PCD that's on the property, Planned Commercial Development, to allow Cracker Barrel to place this storage module on the site for a period, I think, from beginning of August through the end of January, kind of covers some of the holiday season. And as Mr. Moore said, in 2009, the same application was filed. At that time, it was for 2 units, and that was denied by the Planning Commission. And now they've requested a similar situation, but with only 1 unit. And again, Planning Commission denied it, and this is before you on appeal. And in 2009, and again, this time, staff is not in support of it. We suggested that they look at creating a more permanent situation.
Did they give any explanation as to why they won't do a permanent?
I think corporate office or something prefers this kind of temporary storage, either on-site or off-site.
Did they explain why they need this?
I guess as they get closer to the holiday season, they just get additional
Merchandise that they want to store?
merchandise items, yes.
'Cause, you know, I'm very concerned about that development there. It did not take off like it had intended to, and only the outer parcels are selling and being viable. I got some interiors that are not doing well, so I don't want to do anything to hinder the growth possibilities. So I'm very much concerned. Why did staff deny this? I don't want to do anything to hurt their growth.
We just think there are other options, and it's not what we think is the appropriate type of use for that location, putting temporary, it's a hug and haul kind, it's a 40 by
Yeah,
8.
I hate those things. I really do, and I don't want it to be unsightly. But I like at the same time, I definitely want to support the growth there because, like I said, only the outer parcels are really profitable there. So
And again, the Plan Commission did deny it.
Did
so
deny it.
Yes, it's on
Okay.
appeal.
Well, I'll see what they have to say for themselves when they come next week. All right, thank you.
Director Wyrick, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Moore, what are we doing with ordinance 13? I read the ordinance and I didn't see any specific areas. Does this only apply to the areas that we've already identified?
Director Wyrick, this is part of the Timex settlement. It does apply only to the areas that were mentioned in the other one. In the ordinance itself, there was a reference to what the city would do, and then there was also a reference to agreement with the settlement that had been worked out between the parties. One aspect of the settlement is that if ADEQ, EPA, whoever the successors may be, come forward at some point and say, oh, we don't have to worry about this anymore, then they would be able to take off the ground, the mining or digging restriction there. I thought that was covered. They don't. I don't care. And if it makes them feel better, then we can do the amendment and just have it taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we can move now to the items on the last page, and let me call in Emily Cox, our Intergovernmental Relations Manager, for a presentation and an update on what's
Mayor,
happening at the legislature.
Emily, just a second. I do need to make an announcement. Because he tends to leave after his opportunity to present before the board. But after 39 years of service to the city of Little Rock, our outstanding, very competent planning director has announced his retirement. And so we're going to have an opportunity to celebrate Tony's service later in the next few months, but I did want to let the board know that Tony is retiring about the middle of this year. So we're gonna
So we
miss you,
have time to
Tony.
change his mind. All right.
Okay, Emily.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, I would like to update you on our agenda as it pertains to the Arkansas General Assembly, and then also some of the major bills that impact cities that have come before the General Assembly. So first, in terms of our agenda, our bill to modify existing procurement law to allow for electronic bids it's passed the House yesterday, 96-0, so it's been referred to a Senate committee. And our bill regarding addresses of record that would be used when sending notices to property owners for code violations has been given to a sponsor, so I expect that to be filed in the coming days. And then our bill to clarify the instances in which the city is able to file a civil suit against a property owner in cases of criminal abatement is Senate Bill 43, and it's in the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I'm continuing to educate legislators about that bill. And then there are two more items that are in the Municipal League's agenda that I know are of interest to you, so I wanted to share those with you. The first is to enhance the historic rehabilitation income tax credits. Senator Sample filed Senate Bill 253 yesterday to amend that income tax credit, and his bill impacts the per project cap. So that's one. And then the other, the Municipal League also supports changing the law concerning the discount that's available to retailers for prompt submission of sales tax returns. And so, the Municipal League reported on Friday that they're seeking a sponsor for that. And I knew those would be of interest to you. There have also been two bills filed about online sales. The first is Senate Bill 140 by Senator Jake Files. And it requires sales tax to be imposed on large volume sellers that don't have a physical presence in the state, and it is not clear whether it applies to local sales tax, and amendments are expected on that. So I'm continuing to watch that one. And then the other on online sales is House Bill 1388 by Representative Dan Douglas, and it was filed yesterday, so we're still reviewing it, but it's to require out-of-state sellers and facilitators to provide notice to Arkansas purchasers regarding tax due on certain purchases and to report sales made to Arkansas purchasers. So we'll continue to look at that one as well. And then some other bills of interest that I wanted to update you on. Senate Bill 14 is Senator Stubblefield's to prohibit municipal sanctuary city policies, and that one has not been run. And so we'll be watching that one. And there are several sales tax exemption bills that would have an impact on our budget if they're passed. Several of those keep coming up on the deferred list on committee agendas, and several do not. So we're watching all of those and working with the Municipal League as well. And then there are a couple of annexation bills that both have arisen out of issues in Garland County. The more recent one is House Bill 1335, and it affects enclave annexations, and it would allow a majority of the qualified electors in an annexed enclave to bring the matter to a vote within 1 year of annexation. And so the result of that, if that would become law, is that the services that are promised as part of the annexation wouldn't be provided until that year's deadline has passed. And then the final bill I wanted to bring to your attention is Senate Bill 138 by Senator Hickey from Texarkana. And it creates a procedure for the revocation of a charter of a municipal corporation as a result of noncompliance. And this one is concerning to us. And the sponsor is going to meet with the executive committee at the Municipal League tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. I hope conversations are productive. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have. There have been lots of bills filed, and those are the highlights.
Questions? Director Adcock.
Yes, on the cap, the $25 cap on sales tax, is there anything that's being done about that? On large items, we only get $25.
No, ma'am. That is not, that has been, I believe, in the Municipal League's agenda in the past, and it's not this time.
Okay, thank you.
We did talk about visiting with the automobile dealers about that. They usually are the ones that object to those things, about some type of a compromise. The climate out there is probably not very conducive to those issues. At least that's my initial reaction. But certainly if they're trying to get all sorts of tax exemptions, I'm not so sure that we might not have an opportunity to at least play the foil on that. So
I'll have some conversations.
we ought to do some more work and at least check that out and maybe get something drafted at least that we can talk to some legislators about. Vice Mayor Webb?
Thank you. Thanks, Emily. Sure. I just haven't checked the news today. Do you know what happened with Charlie Collins' bill and the House Judiciary Committee this morning?
College campuses, I believe it got out of committee this morning.
Thanks.
Senator Sample's bill on increasing the per project cap, what is the increase proposed to go to?
Right now, it's 25% of $500,000, and the bill changes it to 25% of $1.6 million.
1.6 million.
25% of that, so
Right,
400,000. And that would be effective July 1, 2017.
Well, we should be hopeful that passes. That is the change in the interpretation of a per project. It really stunted some of the developments in downtown, as well as Hot Springs, as well as Pine Bluff. They're trying to work on the Pines Hotel and a variety of other things. So that's going to be, hopefully that's going to be very helpful. So I just encourage all of us to, if we see some of our legislators, to be sure and comment on that. And certainly Senator Files and the other out-of-state seller bills. I'm not sure how we get jurisdiction over them when they don't comply, but I'm going to be interested to see what the legal counsel says about that. So I'd be great if we can get it done. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Our next item is the October 16 financial report. Sarah? Excuse me.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board. I just want to remind you as we're talking about the October financial report that the city revenues are typically received 2 months behind. Sales that occur in December, we'll see those sales tax results at the end of February. The same is true with our property tax collections. They're assessed in 1 year, collected in the next year, and we recognize those revenues that we receive through the end of February. Our other major revenues, the utilities, we typically receive those revenues a month behind as well. And so, and then with the expenditure side of things, we do what's called a search for unrecorded liabilities on bills. Your bills typically come in the month after you incur an expense. And so many of the departments will submit those bills for payment in the month of January and February that came in, for things that were incurred during the month of December. And so that's why these reports are typically a couple of months behind. But first of all, on the next slide, you'll see our revenues, and these are revenues that we were notified of through the end of December that are associated with October actual revenue. And through the end of October, we had collected 85.59% of our annual budget. Just 10/12 of the budget would be 83.33%, but this compares to 85.44% same period a year ago. So you'll see our current year and our last year are noted by the red and the blue lines, and we're just almost exactly on top of each other, very consistent with the same period a year ago. On the next slide, you'll see that from a dollar perspective, $162,446,000 of our budget was collected. 10/12 of that would have been $158,168,268, and it compares to $161,413,285 the same period a year ago. So our revenues are currently $4.3 million above the amended budget, and that's due primarily again to the timing of our revenue collection, which we've talked about frequently. They're approximately $1,033,000 higher than the same period a year ago, and so we'll discuss those variances in detail in just a moment. If you look at the next slide, you'll see that one of the biggest favorable variances is in our general property taxes. And as I discussed last month, we go ahead and accrue those receipts that we know are coming in within the next 2 months. And so this does reflect, even though this is the October report, it collects the very large deposit that we receive in November for October collections. The remaining property tax revenues are primarily the excess commissions that typically come in the February timeframe and are pulled back to December, and then homestead receipts. But for the most part, the large portion of our property tax receipts have been collected for the year. Our sales tax revenues are typically heaviest in the fourth quarter. We'll talk about that variance in detail in just a moment. And our licenses and permits, which are showing the favorable variance, again, the largest portion of that is associated with our business licenses that are collected at the first of the year. And our intergovernmental revenues are complete for the year. We receive those at the end of June or July. Otherwise, our variances are not significant, really, as a percentage of the revenue. The franchise fees variances are still just slightly below budget here, but we do have some receipts on our phone services and our fiber and all that come in a little bit later on a quarterly basis that we true those up. I'm still expecting franchise fees to be in line with budget at the end of the year. If you look at the next slide, this is the comparison to the same period a year ago. Yes. Mm-hmm. Page 4.
Yeah, right. I think it would be helpful in the future The year-to-date budget that we have up there is the amended budget, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
We ought to have what we started with. There ought to be another thing that says what we started with, not what we amended to. Because really, when we start having to look at this, we need to be able to say, this is where we thought we were going to be, this is what we amended to, this is the revenues to date based on both of those two budgets.
I agree, that's excellent information. It gets hard to get all that on one slide, but we will, and still be able to see it, but we will try.
Well, then then we can maybe take some of the money that we have and buy some magnifying glasses for us to see, but.
Okay, we'll move on, but I will make that note. On slide 5, we're showing the comparison to the same period a year ago, and this is to give you a better reflection of the actual timing of revenue collection and where we stand in comparison to the previous year. And again, the primary variance in our property taxes, well, there's two things. There is some growth there, and then there's also about $600,000 worth of the excess commissions that had to be pushed to this year because they were received too late to be reflected in the prior year. So that's creating the favorable variance in property taxes. As you get down to utility franchise fees, we've talked about those in great detail, and that's primarily associated with the gas and the electric franchise fees, which I'll talk about in detail in a moment. And the miscellaneous variance is primarily just due to workers' compensation refunds, which, as claims are settled, we have an excess policy. When it goes over a certain amount, we'll receive refunds associated with that excess policy, and that just depends on the level of claims that we've had in the previous year. So as we move on to the next slide, we'll look at our sales tax revenues, and we are continuing kind of the volatile collection of sales tax revenues that we've seen over the last several years. While we had a very favorable month last month, I think when I was here presenting just a few weeks ago, I told you we had just received our receipts in December for the month of October, and that they were down, which nearly offset the gains that we had made the previous month. Once again, we just received the receipts in January for the month of November, and they were favorable. So hoping that December will at least be in line with budget, and we will end the year slightly above our amended budget, but well below our original forecast of 2.2%, to your point. The actual city sales in this slide, the city sales tax decreased 5.42% in December for October sales. The portion of the county sales decreased 3.1%. Combined, the blended collections were down 4.3%. We did have a little more discussion with DF&A and on our sales tax collections, and one of the things that we can't predict and we don't necessarily know is going to happen when a seller amends their tax returns from previous years. That's not a rebate, that's not an amendment, it's just an amendment of their budget, and it can affect our collections. It could be an amendment of the past 3 years' worth of tax returns that could hit us all at once, and so that's not something we can actually forecast very well. On the next slide, you'll see just the last 12 months, kind of the history of where we are. Our blended sales tax revenues, as I mentioned, were down 4.31% from the same month a year ago. Our year-to-date results are just 0.3% above the amended budget, and they're 0.7% below the same period a year ago. When we amended our budget, we said we were amending it to be at approximately 0.5% growth in the fourth quarter, not for the entire year, just in the fourth quarter. So over the last 12 months, our sales tax results are 0.52% above the previous 12 months. So we have seen about 0.5% growth for the year as of this point in time. On the next slide, you'll see the month-to-month comparison, and again, we did adjust to our actual sales through October when we did that budget amendment in November. Last month, our collections were $441,000 above the amended budget. This month, they were $419,000 below the amended budget. So right now, we're $21,782 favorable, which is 0.3%, and we're actually negative 0.7% in comparison to the same period last year. Over the last 12 months, the growth rate is 0.52%. On the next slide, you see the tax generated by our 1 cent, both the operating portion and the capital portion. Life to date, that has brought in $230 million for projects to the city. $86 million of that has been capital projects. $143.7 million has gone to our operating budget. During the current year, $15 million towards capital projects and $25.1 million to our operating budget. And the yellow highlight is just where we had rebated the airport fuel taxes, which skews the variance just slightly. But we have 0.22% growth in the current year for our local 1 cent tax. On the next slide, you see the electric franchise fees. Again, we did make a budget amendment that reduced our budget to 5.6% lower than previous year revenue. We are only 5.29% lower than previous year, so we're slightly ahead of our budget, but we're $650,000 below the same period a year ago. But we are in line with our amended budget here. And on the next slide, our gas franchise fees. We had, Scott, the next slide. Yeah, our gas franchise fees. Here we had, our year-to-date usage has decreased 19% due to favorable weather. Again, the 27% reduction in revenue is due to the just absolutely very, very low natural gas prices. So we're $761,000 below the same period last year, but we are absolutely in line with our amended budget. On the next slide, we have our general fund expenditures. We had expended 81.7% of our budget. Again, 10/12 of the budget would be 83.33%, and this is slightly more than the same period a year ago where we were at 80.49% of our annual budget at this time. On the next slide, you see the dollars. We have expended $153,815,000 compared to a budget of $156,896,000 and compared to $147.6 million the same period last year. So we're approximately $3 million below our budget, about $3.1 million below budget through the end of October, but we've spent $6.2 million more than the same period in the previous year. So as we look at our detail by departments on the next slide, I'll highlight a few of these. Again, the significant favorable variance in general administration is due primarily to the timing of those actuarially determined other post-employment benefit contributions, the judge's pension contribution that we get billed from APERS, and this is for a previous pension plan's unfunded liability. It's about $230,000 a year for that one. And those things are generating about $1.8 million favorable. On the flip side, we have about a $500,000 negative variance just due to the timing of our debt service payments. They're all budgeted, they just don't occur ratably throughout the year. All of this is in line with budget. I do not expect a variance in general administration, a significant variance at the end of the year. The negative variance in community programs, we had some turnover in staffing, and when they set up the new staff, they were charged to the community programs budget in the general fund, and there were a couple positions that should have been charged to special projects associated with the children, youth, and family and the $5.5 million allocation. We got them transferred on the payroll, but the adjustment for their retroactive was made in November, so you'll see that variance go away. As the information technology budget shows a favorable variance of $672,000. Due to the timing of the expenditures and all associated with the voice over internet protocol project that has been contracted and encumbered, those encumbrances are going to roll into 2017. We are transferring $626,000 of that budget into the special project to pay for those improvements that were intended to occur in the current year. So that favorable variance will be reserved to complete that project due to timing. As we move down, The golf is showing a negative variance of $177,000. I will tell you that that variance is going to get lower, but I still anticipate that there will be a negative variance at year end associated with the operation of the golf courses. Zoo is showing a negative variance of $209,000 at the current time, but that variance is due mainly to the timing of their events and activity. Their revenues are offsetting that negative variance through now, excess revenues, but by the end of the year, I expect that negative variance to be gone. I expect them to be in line with budget at the end of the year. On fire, $726,000 of that variance is associated with some personnel costs, clothing and EMT allowance, overtime payments, holiday premium excesses, due somewhat to vacant positions having to make up on the overtime for part of that. $789,000 of the unfavorable variance is just due to the timing of the pension contribution to the closed fund, which kind of correlates with the timing of collection of property tax revenues. Again, they have $158,000 of favorable variances in their operating expenses. So all of the overage is associated with either the pension or with personnel. There are excess vacancy savings at the end of the year. So some of the vacancy savings in the fire department has been returned to help offset that overtime, and I do not expect them to have a large variance at the end of the year. There may be a slight one, but not a large variance. The police department, I think last month I told you, we get billed monthly from LOPFI for the merged local plan that we consolidated. And at the end of the year, we make a lump sum contribution to pay down that unfunded liability. And it's based on the collection of property tax revenues and other dedicated revenues. And we made a $2.2 million transfer at the end of the year, which was over it was what the revenues were as opposed to what they were billing us to pay down that liability. So I expect police to be pretty close to the budget at the end of the year. If we look at the next slide, we'll talk about our vacancy savings. The amended vacancy budget was $7,250,000. Through the end of October, we had achieved $6,710,000. There were 140 budgeted positions that were unfilled in the general fund. Approximately 60 of those were in the police department for officers and sergeants. On the vacation and sick payouts, we had increased the accrual to $1,350,000, and we had expended $1,215,000 of that budget for retiring employees. On the next slide, you'll see that we actually, while we increased our vacancies in the police department, we did have an overall decrease in our vacancies in the general fund due to the startup of the fire recruit schools, and there was no vacancy in fire as of this point. There were some in training, so not all of them were fully deployed, but all of the positions were filled. And next Friday we have a recruit school. This Friday, we have a recruit school graduating in the police department, I think 8 recruits, and then another school of 20 begins very shortly thereafter, working on trying to accelerate the number of schools to get those positions filled. And that concludes your report for October.
Sarah, would you go back to the slide immediately previous to that? I'm just, one before that. Thank you, Scott. Just a curiosity question on number 18, the zoo. Of that $5.5 million in the budget, how much of that do they generate in terms of their own revenue that comes directly from the zoo?
I'll have to double.
If you could refresh my memory on that.
Yeah, and I have to double check. Their revenues are in the $3-point-something million. Yeah, and the general fund.
3.3.
I think.
And then we
about,
supplement it to the 5.5.
Yeah, and of course, this is just 10/12 of the budget. It's actually
Right.
more than that. And the 3 whatever million number is an annual number, not 10/12.
Right, that's a full number.
But I can get you those exact numbers. I mean, all of the Parks and Recreation operations are
We supplement.
subsidized, and that's why we moved them from enterprise funds back to the general fund several years ago, because they really were never intended to operate self-sufficiently.
We hoped. Director Campiris.
Sir, can you go back to slide number 15? First of all, I'll ask the mayor, have we had any response from your letter yet?
I have received a response from Congressman Hill's office, and have not heard from Senator Cotton. I have talked with Chris Caldwell, representative for Senator Bozeman, and I believe the manager's office is supposed to be coordinating, trying to get them here. So those two have reached out, but I've not heard yet from Senator Cotton's office.
Thank you. Sir, if you look at 140 budgeted positions that we have unfilled, and these are all real positions, correct?
Yes.
If they were budgeted, if they were bodies in those positions, how much would that increase? What would be the cost of if you had all 140 of those people filled?
It would, I believe it would be in the neighborhood of what we budget as vacancy savings.
It's that number that you see.
7
It's
million.
about the 7 million.
So that's the,
Yeah. Now, you're always going to have some amount
I
of
know you have
vacancy
some.
savings.
So if you took,
even at
let's
full
just say,
employment.
if let's just say you took 75% of this, the 25% you're always going to have some flux. It's like unemployment. I mean, unemployment's not zero. Unemployment rate in the United States is not zero.
Timing to fill positions and.
So you would have $4 million or so that if we had all the positions filled, that we would be short in our budget.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that all? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And I met with Bruce this morning, and I understand that, and just so I know everyone asks these questions occasionally, and I wanted to give an update about the plan to fill our police vacancies. And Bruce indicated that the Police Chiefs Association is going to be making a presentation the end of February. Is that right? And so we'll have a plan on how we're going to try and ramp up and fill those vacancies at the end of this end of February.
And I'll just add, I mean, we're not waiting until then to ramp up. I mean, what you'll hear, we can't get them here until February 28th, but what you'll hear at that point is also things that we already are doing and putting in place to gear up. As Sarah mentioned, we have a class that starts in about 3 weeks out at the training academy. We also will have a third class that will start in October, November timeframe. We've never run 3 classes, so we're streamlining that. You'll hear from the association our thoughts on testing, and that's going to really impact that third class later this year.
So, Bruce, on the 3 classes, are we starting 3 classes in the year 2017?
We'll have a
we've got one starting in a month.
Right.
That will be the first one that started this year.
Correct. And then you'll have, and again, this class that started in February doesn't graduate until September. So then we're starting in October. So you have one class that graduates and 2 classes that starts. But our goal, once we get on, we'll have 3 classes going.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I hope that there's a way. I was hopeful that we could actually start 3 classes.
Yeah. I mean,
so that we can ultimately try and catch that up. Otherwise, I mean, we've had 2 classes a year before in the past, and that doesn't seem to have been able to catch us up.
But we've never, I mean, we'd have a class that graduates in February, we'll start another class in March, and we would start a class the beginning of next year. So we're shortening the time frame, the gap between the classes that start. And our goal would be to start 3 classes, but right now we don't graduate one until this week.
Okay, Director Campiris.
there was a paper given from, I guess, ULR about the effect of multifamily housing on property values. Are we gonna go over that? Are they gonna make a presentation?
We are. I just wanted to get you the document today. Dr. Crawer is going to be here on February 14th.
Okay, great, thank you.
Director Wright?
Yes, back to the recruit class, Mr. Moore. What happened to the consultant? Is that what the police chief are going to present to us?
We put out an RFQ, and this is the International Association of Chiefs of Police that were the consultants. So those are
Okay.
the ones that are coming in.
So they're making the presentation on their findings?
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Director Hancock?
Mr. Moore, we've had 2 individuals hit by automobiles and killed in southwest Little Rock, one on Stagecoach and one on Baseline. There was some suggestion, I think you received a copy of it, about putting some barriers up on Baseline so people cannot cross right in that area. There also was suggestions that we not allow Popeyes to have an opening onto Baseline Road. Has any of those suggestions been looked at? Because if you go to Baseline at night, it's just a constant people running back and forth from those apartments over to the liquor store, over to Walmart's area. And then, of course, on Stagecoach, you have the same thing. And both are state highways. They're very busy streets. But can we look at something on both of those streets to help not have so many accidents?
Director, we will. As you mentioned, though, they're both state highways, so we'd have to also work with the highway department.
Well, even some signage maybe in those areas that, please do not cross, or something that we can.
I think I did see something, and I know I forwarded on to get it reviewed.
Okay, thank you.
Director Hines?
Yes, Bruce, can you send us an electronic copy of this as well? It's a little cumbersome to look at, and I've got some serious questions just on initial study of it, so I'd like to get into some of his data and stuff.
Okay.
Thanks.
Director Wright?
Mr. Moore, I forwarded you an email from Ann Marshall about some complaints about speeding construction vehicles along Bowman Road. Will you please have staff look into that, or the police department look into it? Because they feel, this complaint is saying that the road is being further eroded and made unsafe by these speeding trucks. But that construction ought to be, well, no, because he's doing it in phases, so this is going to go on for some time. Thank you.
Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Mr. Moore, to tag on to what Joan was talking about, on Stagecoach Road, it's been a few years back, I asked for some additional lighting along Stagecoach Road. And one of the things that the information officer said was the lighting was poor on Stagecoach. At the time I asked for it, there was some construction on further south that the highway department was doing, and they said that they didn't want to do the lights on Stagecoach until that construction was completed. And I'm not sure that the lights were ever put in, the additional lighting on Stagecoach. It is very dark through there. So if you would check into that, that's been a couple of years ago, maybe longer than that, when we talked about it. And I know the highway department's involved in it, in the approval, but it was my understanding that they had stated that they would do something, or they would agree to something after the realignment of the new road through there. Thank you.
Director Hancock?
To bring the petitions in and to talk to the board. 1 week, please.
First of all, the installation of the speed humps it was not imminent, and I have asked Public Works to hold off. I'm going to set up a site visit with Director Peck and go out and look at, I mean, these are the speed humps that we've been putting in for the last 17 years. But we'll go out and look at it. And what usually happens is the people who live on the street, they want them. It's the people who are cutting through that don't. So anyway, I don't plan on putting them in right now.
We had farms up on Overlook on those same things, so I agree with you. The people that live there wants to slow people down, but people driving don't want to slow down. But they do have
But again, the goal of speed humps is to slow people down.
People want, still want them. And they say y'all won't do it, so if they don't want them, I do.
Director Hines.
Well, this wasn't originally what I was going to ask, but just not anecdotal, but Bruce, in Wellington Village Drive, we had them stripe for bicycle lanes and a center lane to narrow the roadway, and y'all just completed a speed study, and it showed a definite decrease in speeding through our neighborhoods without speed bumps, just narrowing the roadway. And I've driven Biscayne before. I don't think some sections of it are striped, but not necessarily that much. But anyway, that wasn't really what my comment was. Can you also have Public Works give me an update on where we are as far as the Taylor Loop improvements, as far as right away going to bid and starting construction on that? I thought that was supposed to coincide with the LaMarche extension, but it seems to we don't see any activity on it quite yet. Thank you.
Director Peck, you're recognized. You just need to leave if you'll hit your button.
I've been hitting my button.
Well, you don't have to, you just have to hit it once.
Oh, well, I guess I'm impatient.
I think
So I
that's
feel
not
like I
unusual.
am actually an expert on speed. I thought they were bumps, but no, they're humps. Because I have been fielding all sorts of phone calls and emails since January the 5th. And so as someone who does go through Leawood quite often, obeying the speed limit and going over both the big and small humps, I cannot tell you how divisive this has been. For and against, it's just absolutely, people are passionate about it. So anyway, I can give you a whole list of information if anybody wants some interesting bedtime reading on how serious this is to some folks. But thanks, Bruce, for the site visit. I look forward to even learning more about speed humps.
Welcome to City Government.
Thank you.
Director Wright?
Yes, Mr. Moore, I want to follow up with you on a complaint that was received at the Common Unity Community Conversation on the violence that we were experiencing in and around Barrow. This was regarding Potter Street and the lack of lighting, or the lighting being too dim. And I would like an update on the widening and whether or not, trying to think of the lady's name, I'll email her name, whether or not they are going to address that ditch next to her house. You had made a site visit out there.
Yeah, what I'm going to do, I've got a list of all of the items from that night, and we'll do a follow-up and get them all to you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. The final items on our agenda, we'll see how many of these boards and appointments we can tackle on item 17. And we're going to do our evaluation of our city manager and city attorney on Tuesday. So if you will, get your thoughts pulled together on that, and we'll be moving forward on Tuesday. All right, if there's nothing else, then our agenda meeting is complete. Thank you.